That's
One of the
awesome.
things I worry about
great
with this
overview.
picture is that all that fabric's going to fall in the lake and get wet.
Yeah, that is a
Shrink.
concern. However, it's wicking, so you don't have to worry about it.
There it is, it's time. Welcome everyone, August 19th, 2026. How Microsoft Fabric fits in with Microsoft 365. And to help us do that today, we have another special guest, Jason Himmelstein. Welcome to the party. Yay! And guess what? The gang is all here. Carrie's back from vacation. We are thrilled about that and happy to be with you today. Okay, so we're going to talk about Microsoft Fabric. Pretty much none of us know anything about it, so we're going to let Jason lead the way on this one. We're going to have Jason introduce himself. We're going to talk about Fabric. We're going to talk about Power BI. We're going to talk about Power BI in SharePoint and Teams. And Power BI and Fabric. So it's like a big circle, apparently. Some new preview things called mirrored SharePoint lists, which I don't know anything about at all. This is the first time I'm hearing about that one. Embedded reports in SharePoint Pages, which I think since the invent of Power BI, everybody has wanted and used to varying degrees of success. And then Fabric and Power BI learning opportunities. Obviously, Q&A is on there, but as always, please make sure you just put your comments in the chat or raise your hand. You can come off mute. You can ask Jason random questions at will. He loves that kind of thing. So feel free. All right, Jason, it is up to you, sir. Introduce yourself to the fine folks.
And I'm wearing the same shirt as in the picture. I feel
like
like
that's fantastic.
You're going to think I only own one shirt, but that's okay. So hi everybody, long time listener, first time speaker here. I have joined the Ask Sympraxis calls numerous times and just come on to have a little bit of fun. But I am former Microsoft MVP, not current MVP. So that's an error on the slide there. Sorry, didn't know.
That's me.
I went to work at Microsoft for a couple of years. And when you do that, you give up all of those titles. I was a regional director. I was an MVP in Office Apps and Services and in data platform and all of those fun things. Today, I do my own consulting for some very large customers and for some small ones as well. And mostly, I just have fun with data, honestly. I'm doing a lot of architecting of cool solutions these days. But it all stems from data. And that's been my mantra for years is, you have to have good data in order to be able to do anything with it. You can have lots of pretty stuff, but if the data's bad, then it's hard to do anything with. So I think that's about it for me. I do a podcast with this the guy who's actually a Microsoft MVP, John White. We refer to him as Big Scary Canadian. So if you're ever looking for more content on Power BI and Microsoft Fabric, we paused for the summer because honestly, it was just too insane. I was only home about 11 nights during the summer. I was on 3 different continents and many different time zones. So we sort of paused and we're going to release a whole bunch of content starting here at the beginning of September. We've got a bunch of backlogged episodes that'll come out. And we're actually recording again tomorrow. About the July updates. So you'll be able to catch that soon.
Jason, are those your bifocals on your forehead?
They are not actually. My bifocals are in a different case, but these are my monofocals. These are my reading glasses. But I just had to renew my post office box, and the lady was like, "So what is your industry? Is it optics?" I'm sitting here trying to figure out what in the world she's talking about. I was like, "Oh, bifocal. No, it's business intelligence. It's a focus on business intelligence." I'm so sorry. I've gotten many different questions over time about the name. We started it about 10 years ago, and the name actually came. I don't remember whether it was Dan Holm or Lyman Goodrich, but one of them came up with the name, and it was way too much fun. We had a lot of jokes about it, but it stuck over time, and so it became the LLC.
Nice. I love that. All right, I think we can dig into helping the fine folks understand what the Microsoft Fabric umbrella is, because it is an umbrella. It really includes a lot of stuff under the covers. And so if you wanted to help us sort of make sense of this slide, I think that would be very helpful for the folks.
Absolutely. So this is a Microsoft marketing slide, just to be transparent and clear. I don't make slides this pretty, first of all. Just that's never going to happen. This is a pretty slide. You'll see other slides of John and mine. They're not nearly as pretty. But so Fabric at its core is a data platform. Okay, it's a unified data platform that Microsoft has, and it consists of all of the different Azure services that didn't have a home. They all got sort of pulled together. So Power BI was wildly successful for a number of years, and in the Azure space, in the data space, they had a bunch of different homes for a lot of these different things. And they came along and said, how do we make all of the things as successful as Power BI? And they looked at it and said, well, first of all, licensing is a nightmare. Trying to spin up all of these different things independently, trying to get networking right on all of them, trying to get all the data so that you could talk to each other was just really difficult. How do we make this simpler? How do we make it a single consumption model like Azure as opposed to something crazy like Power Platform? I think everybody knows the Power Platform licensing is a little bit complex and difficult. And so they looked for a way to simplify. So as a part of Fabric, you buy a Fabric SKU is how they refer to it, which is a sizing thing of the number of back-end cores that you get and the amount of consumption that you can have. And with that, you get access to all of the different tooling inside of Fabric. So when you're on a paid SKU, you get access to everything. There are a couple of minor exceptions to that, but they're really outliers, and I'll get to it in just a minute. But the biggest one impacts our SharePoint friends the most. So when you take a look at it, Fabric, each one of these is an engine in these little 6 boxes across the center, Power BI being one of them. You have IQ, which is all the AI functionality. You have the analytics side of things, which is the analytics engine underneath it. Real-time intelligence, which is affectionately known as Custo. Data Factory, which does a whole bunch of data manipulation. And Fabric native databases is what's being referred to here. So you have SQL on Fabric, and now they have Cosmos DB, and there's a new one called Horizon DB. Not going to dig into any of that, but all of that lives on top of what's known as OneLake, which is the one storage layer for data. And when they first started talking about this, they called it the OneDrive for data. I hated that. Yes. I know. Thank you, Julie, for laughing at that. But they thought that was a really great way to explain it. That we all loved it. Yes, I know. John had so much fun with this because he actually had a session that we used to do called OneDrive, TwoDrive, Blue Drive, White Drive, Blue Drive. Yeah. So exactly. It was a very laughable thing for a while, but truly, with a tenant in Fabric, you get OneLake. Okay, so it's one place to store all of your data that all of these different engines can talk to. And on top of that, you can layer in governance. I know that's a big topic for y'all. How do we actually layer governance in? And so they actually layered on top of the data layer on top of OneLake. So they have this thing called OneLake security, so that you apply the security at the OneLake layer, and then all of the engines respect that, as opposed to going and setting security at each of the tiers. Then you have to add in, because you can't have a conversation anywhere in the world at this point in time without using the word Copilot. So you see Copilot in there also. So that's that. That is Fabric in a nutshell. Gives you all of the access to all of these different engines. And why does it matter about the engines? Because people know how to do things differently. So you have data scientists who know how to do things in crazy languages, right? And then you have SQL people who know how to do things in their language. And you have, Custo people who know how to do things in KQL. All of them can operate on the same data, do the same types of things, talking to the engine that they're most familiar with in a single cost model. And so that's what really makes this up and makes it a lot easier. And it's all stored in a secure way in your Azure-backed data estate. So it lives underneath your Entra ID and all of that. So it has to, you can't have a Fabric account or a Power BI account without an Entra ID account, right? It has to be there because this is business stuff. So that's
that. That's
one of the things I worry about with this picture is that all that fabric's going to fall in the lake and get wet.
Yeah, that is a concern. However, it's wicking, so you don't have to worry about it.
True.
Mark, does that mean you're worried about shrinkage?
Constantly.
All right.
Fabric shrinkage.
We have to go to the next slide now.
We absolutely have to move to the next slide. Whew.
So that's the sort of the overview of Fabric, but want to take it back just a step because I know that a large portion of the audience for Sympraxis is Power BI, or sorry, not Power BI people, not many Power BI people, but instead an awful lot of SharePoint people, Microsoft 365 people, right? So I wanted to take it half a step back and just be able to go, okay, so I told you that Power BI was the inception point for all this Fabric stuff. Well, what is Power BI? Because that's the part that integrates in with Microsoft 365, right? So Power BI is part of Microsoft 365, right? No? But you get it as a part of the E5 license, right? So
it's in there
it has
somewhere,
to be a part of Microsoft 3, but you also and all of this. So the reality is that Power BI is a part of Fabric at the engineering level. As a part of the marketing level, you're seeing it across everything. So it's one of the most ubiquitous things other than the word Copilot that you're going to find in the Microsoft ecosystem. Because Power BI is the visualization engine for analytics in the Microsoft space. So what is Power BI? Well, Power BI is this Power Query engine. It lives inside Excel, it lives inside Power BI Desktop, it lives inside of the Power BI engine in the service as well, right? So we can do this extract, transform, and load operation, which is what it really is. For those of you who are SQL people, SSIS, similar concept, right? So that's where it was born out of. Power Pivot for SharePoint was a big thing back in the 2010 days. For those of you who've been doing SharePoint that long, you know, it was the most expensive server that you would stand up because you had to have SharePoint licensing, SQL licensing, and Power BI licensing. I wrote a book. It's the pictures on the wall over there. I still get nightmares every once in a while and wake up in cold sweats thinking about Power Pivot for SharePoint. But now it's all done for you in the service. And so we do all of that extract, transform, and load stuff into what's called a semantic model. It's the data model that we live with inside of Power BI. So once we pull the data from whatever source it's in, whether it's in an AS400 or if it's in SQL or if it's in Dynamics or SharePoint, it doesn't matter. Once we pull it in to a semantic model, it's now Power BI data. And now we can do stuff with it. And then we have our visualization canvas, the report canvas, which we can now visualize that data, leveraging that data out of the semantic model. We do that either through Power BI Desktop, or preferably now we just do it in the service in app.powerbi.com or app.fabric.microsoft.com, depending upon how you get there.
Oh, okay. That actually helps quite a bit.
Yay.
All right. So now, how does Power BI and SharePoint and Teams kind of get together, I guess?
In a friendly way, I think, right?
Oh,
it really is. So for years, the statement has been, Power BI really doesn't respect SharePoint, but it gets you the data, right? So back in the olden days of SharePoint, where you weren't allowed to interrogate databases, right? You weren't allowed to go. There were hidden lists and all of this other stuff. You weren't allowed to go take a look at. Well, the one way you could definitely go take a look and find the hidden user lists and things like that was using Power BI Desktop. So you could use Power BI Desktop, and it was an approved way of getting there because you didn't have any other choice. Basically, Power BI Desktop just looked right at the SharePoint document library, looked directly at the SQL server and the SQL layer, and spit it all out for you. But how does Power BI see SharePoint and Teams? Well, there's three different ways that we see it. One, the file container. So you have document libraries. You want to use them as a source for information to be able to visualize data in Power BI. Well, we can look inside of Excel files, CSV files, and we can also open Power BI desktop files, PBIX files that are stored in SharePoint document libraries or OneDrive document libraries. Pretty much the same thing, but that's okay. The next one is using SharePoint lists as a data source. Microsoft tried for years to make this simpler. They did some really horrible things to SharePoint lists and gave us some really bad ways of dealing with it. All of those have been sunset at this point, so you don't have to worry about that being, really, really bad. But now you can leverage SharePoint lists as a data source for Power BI in a clean, efficient way. There's actually an exploration option on your document library, on your list, also on your document library. But if you go into a SharePoint list, there's a visualization option using Power BI that you can do a lot more with now. That's actually a really good experience, whereas when you went there before, it was a really bad experience. And by that, I mean, you didn't know how frequently data was going to refresh. It didn't tell you anything about it. It saved it in a hidden place that you couldn't do anything with, and you didn't have the ability to turn it off. So your users would stand this up and go, well, my data is not updating. Yeah, we know. You don't have the ability to refresh it. It was a really awful thing. The last way that Power BI sees SharePoint and Teams is as a report surface. Okay, so we can embed Power BI reports that have been crafted by somebody, whoever they are, in a Teams channel, in a tab. We can embed them into a SharePoint page. We can do it in SharePoint Online or SharePoint On-Prem. Okay, the one caveat to all of this is you have to have Power BI licensing in order to do it. So I mentioned before that there were a couple of picadillos with the Fabric licensing. And this is where I'm going to make people a little bit sad. So there are a couple of ways that you deal with licensing with Power BI. Number one is a Power BI Pro license. Okay. In order to publish anything into the Power BI service for consumption by another human being, you have to have a Power BI Pro license in order to do that publication. Period. Full stop. There is no other way to do it. You have to have a Power BI Pro license to publish into the service, into a workspace that is going to be consumed by another person. If you are trying to consume a Power BI report, you can either have a Power BI Pro license, or you can be in a SKU in Fabric of an F64 or higher, where your workspace is backed in that SKU. Okay, so that's the cutoff point. Now, an F64 costs roughly about $5,000 a month on a reserved instance. Okay, on the pay-as-you-go, it's about $8,500. These are ballpark figures. Now, here's the thing. I've never been a cheap date in my life. So if you thought I was coming with low-cost options, you were wrong. Business intelligence is the thing that you end up paying for. Why? Because it's how you're going to run your business. That's just the reality. It's a costly thing. So a Power BI Pro license, however, costs, and I think they raised the price. It used to be $10 per user per month, which made it really easy because that rolls off the tongue nicely. I think it's about $13 per user per month. Again, these are all, I'm quoting list prices here, folks. I don't know what your personal situations are. Education gets it cheaper, government gets it cheaper, big companies get it cheaper, but there's a cost benefit analysis that you have to do to be able to say how many people are going to be actually viewing a report, as to am I going to cross that $5,000 a month threshold or not? So, right. That's where you make some of those decisions. So all things that you have to,
a lot of our clients are smaller. So it's like a no brainer. You get the Pro license. You don't even discuss the rest of it.
Well, and then there's E licenses that give it to you, right? E5 and E7s. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So and that gets you Power BI Pro. Now, in order to take advantage of the Fabric features, you have to have at least an F2. Now, you think I'm going to tell you how this is going to be a through-the-roof cost? It's actually really not. So on the pay-as-you-go model, I think it's about $300 a month for an F2. Now, that cost scales, and I can find a slide or a link and pop it into the chat. But you'll find that scales nicely from an F2 all the way out to a 2048. So if you've ever played the game on your phone of 2048, that doubling thing, so you can expect that number to sort of scale that way. So the sweet spot that I found for a lot of companies in the mid-tier size, always start with an F2. See how it constrains and how it works. Most companies I've found live around an F8, and you can do the division from an F64 back to an F8. I'm not going to do the math for you, but that's the way you can think about that one in order to get to those type of numbers. So,
yep, there was a lot of comments in the chat about, before you said it, about the SharePoint as a data source for Power BI situation being gone and the sadness about it. But I think what you're saying is they just fixed the issues And now you have a way to use lists and libraries as data sources, and it's through the menu in the list or library, and it's a visualization, and then you get a more robust and better experience than you did with the old ways that they've sunsetted. Am I reiterating correctly?
Yes. So
okay.
Power BI is definitely still, you can still go against SharePoint lists and libraries. You can use Power BI Desktop to do it. As you always have been able to. What you're talking about there is when you go take a look at lists, and I'm not in a space where I could do easy sharing here, but there is an option in the ribbon now for integrate, and if you go to integrate, there was one here for Power BI. I don't know if they still have it or what's going on, because I'm not seeing it in mine right now because I took a quick look. That may be something that just recently changed, because we've been talking about it and seeing it for quite a while.
Just to clarify, they moved it under the export menu, so it's now export to CSV and/or export to Power BI.
Oh,
you remember the old days in SharePoint when we'd get mad about them moving our cheese? It's so much worse now.
That cheese is sitting over there, Jason, and it's getting very, very moldy.
I know.
Yes.
They keep hiding it from me. Yes.
You've got to respect the charcuterie.
All right, so I think that addresses Ami's comments and some others. So let's move on, since we are we got a lot to talk about still. All right, so Power BI and Fabric then.
Yep. So Power BI was the first generally available product in Microsoft Fabric. It's a core thing to know. We've already talked about reports and visuals, semantic models. Workspaces is a concept that came from Power BI. A Power BI workspace is now a Fabric workspace. It's the only thing to know about it. Your Power BI reports still live in there, but now other artifacts can live inside of that workspace now as well. In addition to what we had in the past, we always had import mode and direct query. We now have a new way to deal with data, which is direct lake mode. You do have to have your data in Delta Parquet file format. We're not digging into that level in this conversation, but it combines the two, import and direct query, gives you the best of both, and allows you to see things in real time in a much better way, gives you a lot better experience there. With Copilot, you have the ability to interrogate your semantic model and ask questions. You can get it to do documentation for you, and it will also create report pages for you, which I really enjoy. I would call it a 70% solution. It'll take your semantic model, take a look at it. You tell it what you want to have it build. It'll build it out for you, and it'll get you about 70% of the way there. A lot of times you'll need to redo your branding, your themes, and all of that. But from a report perspective, it really does help. I think that's all on this slide. I drained all the details already. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Very cool. All right. And then this new potential thing, mirrored SharePoint lists. This is cray-cray. What is this?
Yes. So this is still a preview. So you may have access to it. You may not have access to it. It may work. It may not work. So just I'll put all the caveats out there. This is a one-way sync of data from your SharePoint list into OneLake, so that you can do direct lake on top of your SharePoint data. So you're able to, in real time, as new stuff comes into your SharePoint list, be able to visualize that in Power BI. Something we've wanted for a long time. What we cannot do is write back. There is no write back functionality here. You have to still deal with the interface of the SharePoint list. So, but this makes it so you don't have to do scheduling of refreshes, anything like that. It does require Fabric. So at least that F2 SKU. You can use the trial. By the way, there is a 60-day free trial that you can utilize. It gives you almost everything out there. It does not give you access to Copilot, just caveat for that one if you're doing the trial. But all of this stuff gives you that real time, almost real time. You're not going to notice the difference in real time, because by the time you hit refresh, it'll be there, type of a thing. But it gives you that direct lake performance in Power BI against your SharePoint list data. So it's really kind of cool. I'm looking forward to it working consistently out there in the world and coming out of preview so that I can use it with customers. It's not something that I'm using.
Is the opposite direction for us SharePoint people, because if you've got a data lake with some reference lists, and you want to use them in SharePoint, or at least see them in SharePoint, that would be really handy. Get them
Yes,
on
that
that.
would be cool.
The BDC.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well, I
Yeah.
didn't want to use the old acronym, but yeah.
Let's give
I
clients a
wanted it to
direct
work.
feed into business data via SharePoint.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
So
liked
we-
those
we've-
back in the day.
We've
I'm
done
not
things
gonna
like
lie.
that with Power. We've done things like that with Power Apps, and done it wildly successfully over time.
Yeah.
And then there's this new thing called Project Rayfin that I will not go into. It's not, we just don't have the time for it. But I was hoping that we would have that capability to be able to do some write back. Still waiting for that to flush out fully. But all sorts of cool stuff in this space. It's a lot of fun to be in the data space these days. And other than them moving the cheese, it's always fun. But that's
Yes,
on the
they do move
SharePoint
the
side.
cheese around.
So
If they
you
don't
know.
move it, they rename it. So you get to choose your poison, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Do you want cyanide or do you want arsenic? Whichever one you want. So.
Well said. Well said. All right. This is one that the people I work with use a lot. So embedding reports in SharePoint Pages. I think the only downside, and you've sort of started saying this already, is the licensing, right? Like if I go to this page and I don't have a Power BI license, I just get a big square that basically says you can't see what's here. So
You call that a drawback. I call that a feature, and I'm a huge fan. And there's two reasons why. Number one, Microsoft's going to get their money no matter what you do. They're going to get their money. So you may as well just accept it and move on. Number two, it puts security in place by making it something that that you're paying for and you have to have a license for. It actually puts that security in place so that you're not, so there is a feature out there. And I'm going to start this by saying, absolutely do not use this feature under any circumstances unless you want to be fired, unless your data is public data to begin with. Because if you choose to use this feature, your data becomes public, okay? So don't use the anonymous feature in Power BI. Please, you should turn it off for your entire tenant unless you are working in a public domain data set that is meant to be shared with the entire world. Okay,
right.
That's the only way that you can publish data anonymously and get to it. But I will tell you, if you publish it anonymously, I can go off with Google Bing and find it using the crawler and go search app.powerbi.com. I'm going to find your data out there in your Power BI report. So please don't use this. Yeah. So by having to have a license, it allows us to put security in place. And just like with SharePoint, it takes the context, and every time you go and you visit a Power BI report in the SharePoint page, it's passing your user context back. So you're only seeing the data that has been set up for you to be able to see. Okay. Now, there's an important statement in there that has been set up for you to see. So if you have it where all of your data is accessible to everybody in your company, there's no granularity. You're not going to. You're just going to see everything. But if you've set up your data security properly, you're only going to see that data which you're meant to see. And that is good hygiene on your data, good hygiene on your security, good hygiene on your governance, and highly recommend it. So that's my caveat to that.
Nice. All right. Moving on, you brought it up at the beginning, but there's a picture of the big scary Canadian. This is your podcast with John White, which and it's always fun to see you at a conference too. So if people are attending conferences out and John and Jason are presenting, they do a fabulous job presenting together. I've been to several of your sessions and had a good time and learned a lot at the same time. Do you have anything else you wanted to talk about the show? You sort of mentioned it at the beginning, but I think we're.
And are you standing on a stool in that picture, Jason?
Yeah, I was wondering.
Yeah,
John's
how far back was John?
Yeah, exactly.
John, well, you can see his hand has been AI generated to be on my shoulder there. There's some forced perspective there. No, actually, I don't believe I'm standing on anything. I may be on my tippy toes, but other than that, no. John is 6'4". I'm a mere 6'2", so that's just how it goes. I slump a lot usually though, so that's there. I was standing up proper. As far as so we're going to be next week out in Seattle. I believe several of the Sympraxians are going to be there. So looking forward to seeing y'all. But yeah, the podcast is our way of staying up to date on all things Power BI and Fabric and data. We talk about this stuff anyway, so we decided we just record the conversation and share it out there. We sort of took a model after that Todd guy and Shane of back in the olden days of just getting together and keeping your skills sharp. So we we try to do it every 2 weeks. We're not always successful, but we do try because there's news that's worthy of reviewing. So if you get behind, you can always listen to the podcast. So
I always think that the O in bifocal is a bullet hole going through a window. It's not that, is it?
No, it's I think it was so again, back in the IT Unity days, they created this logo for us, and it's meant to be like a digital wormhole kind of a thing. I think it's not the easiest thing to get printed on a shirt, I will say. So embroidery was not my friend with that, but it looks nice on a screen.
Does look nice on a screen. All right, people, we've got a couple of events, FabCon coming up in Europe in 2026, and then FabCon 2027 in Atlanta, Georgia. If you want to go dive deep into the Fabric world, you can do that. We have some resources for you, so you can link on any of those to get more details on that. And obviously that slide is live, so you can move right over to that. Coming up next, September 2nd, when to use a SharePoint skill is going to be our next episode of Sympraxis. And then, like Jason just mentioned, we're going to be in TechCon 365 in Seattle, pretty much most of us, and Jason and John, I love how you added that. Excellent. Mark Cashman's going to be at the Vancouver M365 Summit. We have a discount code for that. Collab Days New England, people, register, show up, or be square. You gotta.
Where's the discount code for that, Julie?
It's free. It's free.
Oh
you don't
my!
need a discount
So
code.
you don't have to pay?
Free.
It's free. You just show up in Burlington, Mass. with your free ticket, and you can join a great day of content. Collab Days Belgium. Patrick speaking out there. He's getting out and about. Patrick,
can't hold him back.
Speaker, that's also a free event in Belgium. And then I will be at TechCon 365 in Dallas in November, and we have a discount code for you there. All right, everybody,
I'll be there
for joining us. Oh, will you? Oh, well, then we can put you on that one. All right, so I'll see you in Dallas. We can clearly have dinners because I have no one else to go with, and you're better than all the rest of them anyway. All righty, people. See you next time. Have a great one.
I take offense.
As you should.
You can have that fence. Put it around your house.
Thank you so much for joining us this week on Ask Sympraxis. We love getting your questions or session ideas. You can submit by using the link in About. If you find this helpful, hit that like or subscribe button and share this content with your colleagues.